Welcome back to Bar Girl Baddies. Today's story hits different because it flips the script on everything we usually talk about here. Most of the time, we're diving into stories of blokes who pack up their lives and chase the Thailand dream, only to watch it crumble under the weight of reality. But what happens when you try to reverse it? What happens when you bring that dream back home with you, thinking you can preserve it in your own backyard like some exotic plant that just needs the right care? Well, today, you're about to find out why that might be the worst decision you ever make. This is Jake's story. He's 32, a tradesman from Perth, Western Australia, and he thought he'd figured out the system. He met a girl in Thailand, fell hard, and decided that instead of becoming another expat statistic, he'd bring her to Australia, where they could build something real, something legitimate, something that would last. Spoiler alert, it didn't. And what Jake lost in the process wasn't just money, though there was plenty of that. It was his savings, his peace of mind, his trust, and nearly 2 years of his life chasing something that only ever existed in the humid air of Southeast Asia. Before we dive in, do me a favour, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever been in a situation where you ignored every red flag because you were convinced this time was different, hit that like button. And if you want to hear more stories like this, real confessions from real people, go ahead and subscribe. Trust me, Jake's story is one you'll want to pay attention to. Alright, let's hear from the man himself. I'll be straight with you. Before Thailand, my life was fine. Not great, not terrible, just fine. And that was the problem. I'm a plumber by trade, been doing it since I was 18, working my way through an apprenticeship while my mates were off at university. By the time I hit 30, I was making decent money, had my own ute, a small rental in a quiet suburb about 20 minutes from Perth City. On paper, I was doing all right. In reality, I felt like I was sleepwalking through my own existence. Every day was the same. Wake up at 5:30, grab a coffee from the same servo, drive to whatever job site was on the books, spend 8 to 10 hours fixing other people's problems, then head home or meet the boys at the pub. Weekends were for footy, barbecues, and trying to pretend I wasn't bored out of my skull. My mates were all pairing off, getting engaged, buying houses in the suburbs, talking about kids and mortgages like these were things to get excited about. And maybe they were. For them. For me, it just felt like watching everyone else's life happen while mine stayed frozen in place. 2 years before Thailand, I'd been engaged myself, Sarah. We'd been together since high school, one of those relationships that just sort of continued, because neither of us knew how to end it. Everyone assumed we'd get married, so we got engaged, and then about 6 months before the wedding, she sat me down and told me she couldn't do it. Said she loved me but wasn't in love with me, all that cliché stuff you hear in movies. Honestly, I was more relieved than heartbroken, which probably tells you everything you need to know about that relationship. After Sarah, I threw myself into work, took on extra jobs, saved up a decent chunk of money, told myself I was building towards something even though I had no idea what that something was. My days blurred together. The Perth suburbs are beautiful if you're into that sort of thing. Clean streets, nice beaches, safe neighbourhoods, but there's a saneness to it all that started to suffocate me. Every street looked like every other street. Every weekend felt like a repeat of the one before. Then my mate Davo came back from a holiday in Thailand and wouldn't shut up about it. 2 weeks in Phuket and the bloke was a changed man, going on about the beaches, the nightlife, how far the dollar stretched, how alive everything felt. I thought he was exaggerating. Doing that thing people do when they come back from holiday and need to justify the expense by making it sound like a spiritual awakening. But he kept at it, showing me photos, telling me I needed to see it for myself, that it would shake me out of whatever rut I was in. I booked a 2-week trip on a whim, Bangkok and Pattaya. Told myself it was just to reset, clear my head, maybe get a tan and remember what it felt like to not think about blocked drains and leaking taps for a fortnight. I didn't have any grand expectations. I'd heard the stories, knew about the bar scene, the nightlife, all of it. I wasn't naive. I just wanted something different, even if it was only for 14 days. The moment I stepped off the plane at Suvarnabhumi, I knew Davo hadn't been exaggerating. The humidity hit me like walking into a wet sauna, thick and heavy, clinging to my skin. The airport was massive and chaotic in a way that felt exciting rather than stressful. Even the taxi ride into Bangkok was sensory overload. The traffic, the motorbikes weaving between cars, the smell of street food mixing with exhaust fumes. The buildings stacked on top of each other like someone had just kept building up, because there was nowhere else to go. I spent the first few days in Bangkok doing the tourist thing. Temples, markets, rooftop bars, the usual. It was incredible, don't get me wrong, but it was also overwhelming. I'm not exactly a solo traveller by nature, and after a couple of days wandering around on my own, I started to feel a bit lonely, so I did what every bloke does in that situation. I found a bar. Pattaya was where everything changed. I'd taken a bus down from Bangkok, checked into a hotel on Beach Road, and spent the first night just walking around, taking it all in. The place was mental. Neon everywhere, music pumping from every direction, bars stacked side by side like books on a shelf. I ended up on Soi 6, which, if you know, you know. Open-air bars, girls sitting on stools out front, the whole scene laid out in front of you with zero pretense. I walked into a bar called Angel Wit, or maybe it was Lucky Star. Honestly, they all blur together. Ordered a beer, sat down, and that's when I saw her. Ploy. She was 25, slim, long dark hair, and when she smiled, it was like someone had turned on a light. I know how that sounds. I know every bloke says the same thing, but I'm telling you, there was something different about her from the start. She came over, introduced herself, asked where I was from. When I said Australia, her eyes lit up. She told me she'd always wanted to go there, asked about kangaroos and Sydney Opera House and all the stuff tourists ask about. But then she started asking real questions. What did I do for work? Did I have family? What was Perth like? She remembered everything. The next night when I came back, she remembered I'd said I had a younger sister, asked how she was doing. I'm not an idiot. I knew the game. I knew she was working, that this was her job, that the attention was part of the service. But Ploy felt different. She didn't immediately ask for drinks or push me to go upstairs. We just talked. She told me about growing up in Isan, about her family's rice farm, about moving to Pattaya for work because there was nothing back home. She was honest about it, didn't try to dress it up as something it wasn't. That first trip, I went back to her bar every night. We'd talk for hours, her teaching me basic Thai phrases, me butchering the pronunciation while she laughed. On my last night, she asked for my line contact, said she wanted to stay in touch. I gave it to her, expecting nothing, but the next morning before my flight, she messaged me. Good morning, fly safe, come back soon. I came back 3 months later. Then 2 months after that. Then again. Each trip was 2 weeks, sometimes 3 if I could swing it. I was burning through my savings on flights and accommodation, but I didn't care. When I was with Ploy, I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. We'd rent a scooter and ride up the coast, wind in our faces, her arms wrapped around my waist. We'd get street food from vendors she knew, pad thai and som tam, sitting on plastic stools while she explained what everything was. She'd take me to places tourists didn't go, local markets, her friend's apartment, a beach up north where the water was actually clear. The more time we spent together, the more real it felt. She'd message me every day when I was back in Perth, good morning texts with heart emojis, photos of what she was doing, questions about my day. She introduced me to her friends, other girls who worked in the bars, and they all seemed to genuinely like me. Ploy told me about her dreams, about wanting to open a small shop someday, maybe a beauty salon, something that would let her get out of the bar scene. 8 months in, I was barely functioning in Perth. I'd be at work, mine somewhere over the Indian Ocean, counting down days until my next trip. My mates started giving me grief about it, saying I was wasting my money, that I needed to snap out of it. Davo, the same bloke who'd convinced me to go in the first place, sat me down one night at the pub and told me I was being an idiot, that I was falling for the oldest trick in the book. One told him he didn't understand, that Ploy was different, that what we had was real. He just shook his head and bought another round. Looking back, I can see he was trying to help, but at the time, I thought he was just jealous or couldn't see what I saw. That's when I made the decision. If I was going to keep flying back and forth, draining my bank account on flights and hotels, why not just bring Ploy to Australia? We could build a real life together. She could get out of Pattaya. I could stop living in this weird limbo between 2 countries. It made perfect sense in my head. I'd have my girlfriend with me. We could start fresh, build something legitimate. I brought it up with Ploy on my 5th trip. We were lying on the beach at Jomtien, late afternoon, the sun starting to dip. I asked her what she thought about coming to Australia, living with me in Perth. She went quiet for a moment, and I remember my heart sinking, thinking she was going to say no. But then she looked at me with those big brown eyes and said yes, that she'd love to. that she wanted to be with me. The next few months were a blur of paperwork, partner visa applications, statutory declarations, proving our relationship was genuine. I had to provide photos, chat logs, bank transfers showing I'd been supporting her, letters from friends confirming we were a real couple. It was invasive and exhausting, but I pushed through it. Ploy had to get medical checks, police clearances, translations of all her documents. The whole process took 6 months, and every day of waiting felt like torture. I kept flying over during the waiting period, couldn't stand being apart for too long. Each visit, we'd talk about our future in Perth. I'd show her photos of my rental, the beaches nearby, the city. I'd describe what our life would be like, how I'd teach her to drive, take her to Rottnest Island, introduce her to my family. She seemed excited, but there were moments, little comments that I brushed off at the time. She'd say things like, "Won't it be too quiet?" or "I'll miss my friends," or "Is the food really that different?" I told her she'd adjust, that everyone feels homesick at first, that I'd be there to help her through it. I believed it too. I genuinely thought love would be enough, that the connection we'd built over those months would translate seamlessly to Australian soil. The day her visa got approved, I nearly cried. I immediately booked her flight, business class, because I wanted her first impression of the journey to be comfortable, wanted her to feel taken care of. I counted down the days like a kid waiting for Christmas. I deep cleaned my rental, bought new sheets, stocked the fridge with food I thought she'd like, even bought a rice cooker because I knew she couldn't live without rice. Perth Airport, international arrivals, me standing there with flowers like an absolute muppet, checking my phone every 30 seconds for updates on her flight. When she finally came through those doors, pulling a suitcase that was almost as big as her, I felt like my life was finally starting. She looked tired from the flight, but smiled when she saw me, let me hug her while other passengers streamed past. The drive back to my place, she was quiet, staring out the window at the wide roads, the space between buildings, the evening sky that seemed to stretch forever. She said it was so clean, so organised, so different. I took it as a compliment. I thought she was impressed. I didn't realise she was already feeling the weight of how foreign everything was, how far she was from everything she knew. That first night, we ordered Thai food from a local place. It wasn't the same as what she was used to, not even close, but she ate it without complaining. We watched a movie on my couch, her head on my shoulder, and I remember thinking I'd finally done it. I found something real, brought it home, and now we could build the life I'd been dreaming about for almost a year. If only I'd known that was the last night, things would feel that simple. The first few weeks were a honeymoon of sorts, but not the kind you see in movies. Ploy was adjusting. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. She'd wake up late, still on Thailand time, and spend the mornings on her phone, video calling friends back in Pattaya. I'd come home from work to find her in the same spot on the couch, still in her pyjamas, the curtains drawn against the Perth sun. I tried everything to make her comfortable. Took time off work to show her around the city, drove her down to Cottesloe Beach, thinking the ocean would remind her of home. But she just stood there, arms crossed, saying the water was too cold, the beach too empty. Where was everyone? In Pattaya, the beaches were alive, music and vendors and people everywhere. Here, it was just us and a handful of joggers and families spread out across the sand, like we all needed our own postal code. I introduced her to my mates and their girlfriends, set up dinners and barbecues, hoping she'd build a social circle. But the conversations never quite clicked. The girls would ask her about Thailand, about her family, and Ploy would answer in short sentences, polite but distant. She'd sit there picking at her food while everyone else laughed and told stories, and I'd catch her checking her phone under the table, scrolling through Facebook or Line, her face lit up by the screen in a way it never lit up when she looked at me. The language barrier was worse than I'd expected. Ploy's English had seemed fine in Thailand, good enough for us to communicate, to share jokes and stories. But here, surrounded by Australian accents and slang and conversations that moved too fast, she was lost. My mate Jono would crack a joke and everyone would laugh, and Ploy would smile like she got it. But I could see in her eyes she had no idea what was funny. She started talking less, retreating into herself, and I didn't know how to pull her back out. Then there was the food. God, the food became this ongoing battle. I'd take her to different restaurants, Thai places, Asian grocers, trying to find something that reminded her of home. But it was never right. Too sweet, too salty, not spicy enough. Wrong vegetables. She'd push the food around her plate and say it was fine, but I knew it wasn't. I started learning to cook Thai dishes from YouTube videos, making a mess of my kitchen trying to replicate some tam and pad krapao, but I could never get it right. She'd eat it and thank me. But there was always this sadness in her eyes, this homesickness that no amount of fish sauce could fix. The isolation got worse when winter hit. Perth winters are mild compared to most places, but Ploy was freezing constantly. She'd wear 3 layers inside the house, complain that the cold went into her bones, ask why Australians didn't use proper heaters. I tried to explain that it wasn't that cold, that people back home would laugh at us for complaining about 15-degree weather, but she didn't care. She was miserable, and every day she seemed to shrink a little more. The money situation started creeping up slowly. Ploy couldn't work yet. Her visa conditions meant she had to wait for approval, and the processing time kept getting extended. First they said 3 months, then 6, then indefinite pending further checks, so I was covering everything. Rent, groceries, her phone bill, which was astronomical because she needed international data to stay connected to home, shopping trips to Carousel or Garden City, because she was bored and buying clothes made her feel better for a few hours. I didn't mind at first. I wanted to provide, wanted her to feel taken care of. But my savings were draining faster than I'd anticipated. I started picking up weekend jobs, emergency call-outs, anything to keep the money flowing. I'd come home exhausted on a Saturday night, covered in grime from crawling under someone's house to fix a burst pipe, and Ploy would be on the couch in the dark, still in her pajamas, eyes red from crying. When I'd ask what was wrong, she'd say she missed home, missed her friends, missed her family. I'd hold her and promise it would get better, that once she could work, once she made friends, once she adjusted, everything would feel different. But even as I said it, I could feel the words ringing hollow. Then the requests started. Small at first. Her mother was sick, needed money for medicine. Could I send $200? Of course I could. Her cousin needed help with school fees. $300? No problem. A family emergency, the roof on their house needed repairs. $800. I sent it without question because that's what you do when you love someone. You help their family, you prove you're the kind of man who steps up. But the requests kept coming and they got bigger. Her brother's motorbike broke down, he needed it for work. Her aunt was in the hospital, her niece needed money for university. Every week there was something new, some crisis back in Thailand that required my Australian dollars to fix. I started to feel like an ATM, but I couldn't say no. Ploy would cry, tell me how guilty she felt being here while her family struggled, and I'd transfer the money to prove I wasn't that kind of foreigner. The kind who takes a Thai girl and forgets where she came from. My bank account that had taken me 10 years to build started evaporating. I was working 60-hour weeks just to stay afloat, paying for 2 lives, mine and hers, plus supporting half a village in Isan I'd never even met. My mates noticed. Dabo pulled me aside one night and asked if I was all right. Said I looked knackered. Asked if the Thailand thing was working out. I lied and said everything was great. That we were just figuring things out. That all relationships go through adjustment periods. 6 months in, things shifted. Ploy had become more distant, spending entire days in the bedroom on video calls, speaking rapid Thai I couldn't understand. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd say her friends, her family, no one important. But there was something in the way she'd close the door, in the way she'd lower her voice when I walked past, that made my stomach twist. One night, I came home early from a job that got cancelled, walked in to hear her laughing from the bedroom, really laughing in a way I hadn't heard in months. I stood outside the door like a creep, listening to her speak Thai in that animated way she used to talk to me back in Pattaya. When I opened the door, she jumped, quickly said goodbye to whoever was on the call, her face flushed. I asked who it was, she said her friend Noi. I asked why she looked so guilty. She got defensive, said I was being paranoid, that she was allowed to have friends, that I was being controlling. We had our first real fight that night. Voices raised, her crying, me feeling like I was losing my mind. It ended with her locked in the bathroom and me sleeping on the couch, wondering how we'd gotten here. I let it go. I wanted to trust her, needed to believe that what we had was real. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew every time she angled her phone away from me, every time she jumped when a notification came through, every time she told me she was talking to Noi. But I'd see a male name flash across her screen before she could swipe it away. Then I found the messages. I'm not proud of it, But one morning after she'd gone to shower, her phone was on the bed, unlocked. I picked it up, told myself I was just checking the time. But I saw the line notifications, saw a name I didn't recognize, a man's name, and I opened it. The messages were in Thai, but I could see the emojis, the frequency, the timestamps showing they'd been talking every day, often late at night after I'd gone to bed. I took screenshots, sent them to my phone, used Google Translate to piece together what they were saying. It wasn't definitive proof of anything physical, but it was intimate, familiar, the kind of messages you send when someone knows you in ways your current partner doesn't. When she came out of the shower, I confronted her, showed her the screenshots. She didn't deny it at first, just went very quiet. Then she started crying, saying it wasn't what I thought, that he was her ex-boyfriend from before we met, that they were just friends, that I was the one she loved. But she felt so alone here, and he understood her in ways I couldn't. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. So I accepted her explanation, told her I understood she was lonely, but that it hurt to see her seeking that kind of connection elsewhere. She promised she'd stop talking to him, that she'd try harder, that we could make this work. We held each other and cried, and for a moment I thought maybe we'd turned a corner. But things didn't get better, they got worse. Poi became more withdrawn, more irritable. Every little thing set her off, the way I chewed my food, the way I left my work boots by the door, the fact that I couldn't speak Thai, that I didn't understand her culture, that I'd brought her to this quiet, boring country where nothing ever happened, and she didn't belong. I started to realize that the woman I'd fallen in love with in Pattaya didn't exist here. Or maybe she'd never existed at all. Maybe she'd been a version of herself she performed for tourists, for men like me who came looking for something we couldn't find a home. In Australia, stripped of the context that made our relationship make sense, we were just two people who didn't fit, forcing something that was never meant to survive the transplant. Her work visa finally got approved in month 8. I thought it would help, thought having something to do, earning her own money, building a life outside our suffocating apartment, would change things. She got a job at a Thai restaurant in Northbridge, working dinner shifts, coming home late, smelling like fish sauce and fry oil. But instead of bringing us closer, it gave her more distance, more time away, more excuses. She made friends at the restaurant, other Thai girls, and suddenly she had a social life that didn't include me. She'd go out after shifts, come home at 2 a.m, tell me they'd just been talking, having drinks, nothing to worry about. I'd lie awake, listening for her key in the lock, feeling like a parent waiting up for a teenager, hating myself for caring so much, for being so desperate to hold on to something that was clearly already gone. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. She came home from work and sat me down, her face serious in a way I'd never seen. She said she needed to go back to Thailand, just for a visit, just to see her family. She'd been gone almost 9 months. Her mother missed her. There was some family obligation she needed to attend. She promised it was only for a month, that she'd come back, that we'd start fresh. Every instinct I had screamed that this was it, that if she left, she wouldn't return. But what could I say? I couldn't keep her prisoner. I couldn't deny her the right to see her family, so I did the only thing I could think of. I bought her ticket, not business class this time. I couldn't afford it, but a decent economy fare on Thai Airways. I maxed out my credit card to do it. The 2 weeks before her flight were strange. She was happier than she'd been in months, smiling again, humming while she packed, video calling her friends to tell them she was coming home. It should have made me happy to see her happy, but all I felt was dread. This heavy certainty that I was watching the end in slow motion. I drove her to the airport at 4 a.m, her 2 suitcases in the back, stuffed with clothes and gifts and all the things she'd accumulated during her time here. We didn't talk much during the drive. At the terminal, she hugged me, told me she loved me, promised she'd message when she landed. I watched her walk through security, watched her turn back once to wave, and then she was gone. She messaged when she landed, sent me photos at the airport, of her friends picking her up, of the familiar chaos of Bangkok traffic. For the first few days, we texted constantly. She sent pictures of food, of her family, of her old neighborhood. She said she missed me, that Thailand didn't feel the same without me there, that she couldn't wait to come back. But slowly, the messages got less frequent. A day would go by. Then 2. She'd apologize, say she'd been busy with family stuff, promised to call soon. The calls never came. I'd send messages that would sit undelivered for hours, sometimes days, before getting a short reply. I could feel her slipping away, and there was nothing I could do from the other side of the world. 3 weeks in, I called her. She answered, sounded distant, distracted. I asked when she was booking her return flight. She went quiet. Then she said she needed more time, that her mother was still unwell, that family stuff was complicated. Could we talk about it later? I said okay, trying to keep the panic out of my voice, trying to be understanding even though I knew with absolute certainty that she wasn't coming back. A week later, she messaged me online, not a call, just a message. Long paragraphs in a mix of English and Thai. She said she was sorry, that she tried to make it work in Australia but she couldn't, that she didn't belong there, that she'd met someone, an old friend who understood her, who she had history with. She said she hoped I could forgive her, that she'd always care about me, but this was better for both of us. I read that message sitting in my work ute outside a job site, coffee going cold in my hand, the Perth sun beating down through the windscreen. I read it 5 times, trying to make the words say something different, trying to find some loophole or misunderstanding. But there wasn't one. It was clear. It was over. She was gone. The months after that were dark. I had to tell my mates. Had to endure the looks that said they'd seen this coming. Had to sit through Davo buying me beers and not saying I told you so, even though he absolutely had. I had to face my family, explain why the Thai girlfriend they'd met twice wasn't around anymore, field my mum's gentle questions about whether I was eating properly, sleeping enough. The financial damage was catastrophic. I'd spent over $40,000 in total. Flights, visa fees, supporting her for 9 months, sending money to her family, the apartment I'd upgraded to so she'd have more space, the furniture I'd bought, the ticket home. My savings were gone. I had credit card debt for the first time in my life. I was back to square one financially, worse than square one actually, and I had nothing to show for it except a rice cooker I never used and a broken heart. But here's the thing. And this is the part that took me a long time to admit. It wasn't all Ploy's fault. Yeah, she lied about the money. Yeah, she probably never intended to build a life in Australia. Yeah, she used me as a way out of the bar scene, a safety net, a means to an end. But I let her. I ignored every red flag, because I wanted so badly to believe I'd found something real, something special, something that would fill the void in my life. I was chasing a fantasy. The woman I fell in love with in Pattaya was a holiday version of both of us. I was the fun Australian with money to spend and time to kill. She was free from the daily grind of bar work, getting to play girlfriend instead of working girl. We existed in this bubble where real life didn't intrude, where we could ride scooters and eat street food and pretend we were in some romantic movie. But you can't build a real relationship on a foundation of fantasy. The moment we tried to transplant it to real life, to bills and work and cold Perth winters and the actual daily business of being together, it collapsed. Because it was never designed to survive that. It was a holiday romance I tried to turn into a marriage, and the weight of reality crushed it. I've learned things about myself through this mess. I learned that I was lonely, desperate even, willing to ignore obvious truths because the alternative was admitting I'd made a massive mistake. I learned that love isn't enough if it's not built on honest foundations, on shared goals, and real compatibility. I learned that you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, can't force someone to love a life they never chose. Do I regret meeting Ploy? No. Do I regret bringing her to Australia? Every single day. But I also understand why I did it, and I have compassion for the version of me that was so desperate for connection, he'd gamble his entire savings on a relationship that only ever worked in one specific context. If you're reading this and thinking about doing something similar, let me save you 40 grand and 2 years of your life. That girl you met in Bangkok, or Pattaya, or Phuket, the one who makes you feel alive in ways you haven't felt in years, she exists in that place, in that moment. She's not necessarily lying to you, but she's not being entirely honest either, because how could she be? You're playing roles for each other, tourist and local, provider and companion, and those roles only work when you're both on vacation from real life. The moment you try to bring that relationship into the harsh light of normal existence, of visas and work permits and cultural differences, and the reality that you have nothing in common except attraction and proximity, it falls apart. Not always. I'm sure there are success stories out there, but for everyone that works, there are hundreds like mine that don't. I'm rebuilding now. Paid off the credit card, started saving again, put my head down and focused on work. I date occasionally, nothing serious, and I'm honest about my baggage now. I tell women on the second date about my Thai ex-girlfriend, about how I learned the hard way that you can't purchase love or force connection. Most of them appreciate the honesty. Some of them have their own versions of the same story. I don't hate ploy. I actually hope she's happy, hope she found what she was looking for with whoever she's with now. She was surviving the only way she knew how, and I was a willing participant in the transaction. We both got something out of it, even if what I got was an expensive education in my own desperation. The hardest part wasn't losing the money or even losing her. It was losing the version of myself I'd been in Thailand, the guy who felt alive and adventurous and like he was finally living instead of just existing. Turns out that guy was as much a fantasy as the relationship. He only existed on holiday, in the heat and chaos of Southeast Asia, with someone to share it with. Back in Perth, I'm just me again, Jake the plumber, fixing leaks and unblocking drains and trying to figure out what comes next. But at least now, I'm doing it with my eyes open. Jake's story is a mirror. A lot of guys don't want to look into, but need to. It's easy to judge from the outside, to say you'd never fall for it, that you'd see through the whole thing from the start. But loneliness is a powerful drug, and hope is even more powerful. When you combine the two with a beautiful woman in an exotic location telling you everything you want to hear, rational thinking goes out the window. The pattern repeats itself every single day. Men from Western countries meet women in Thai bars, fall for the attention and affection, convince themselves this one is different, and either move to Thailand or bring their girlfriend home. Some make it work, build real relationships based on honesty and shared goals. But many, maybe most, end up like Jake, financially and emotionally devastated, wondering how they missed all the signs that were right in front of them the whole time. The tragedy isn't that these women are bad people, because most of them aren't. They're surviving in an economy that gives them limited options, using the assets they have to build security for themselves and their families. The tragedy is the fundamental dishonesty at the heart of these transactions. The fact that both parties are often pretending, playing roles, selling each other fantasies that can't survive contact with reality. Jake was brave enough to share his story, to admit his mistakes publicly, to own the ways he ignored his instincts and common sense because he wanted so badly to believe. That takes courage. There's no shame in wanting connection, in seeking love, in hoping for something better than the lonely grind of daily existence. The shame only comes when we refuse to learn from our mistakes, when we blame everyone except ourselves, when we repeat the same patterns expecting different results. If you've been through something similar, drop a comment, share your story. Support each other. These experiences are isolating, but you're not alone in having lived them. And if you're thinking about heading down this path, about bringing your Thai girlfriend to your home country or moving to Thailand to be with her, talk to people who've done it. Ask hard questions. Be honest with yourself about what you're really looking for and whether this relationship can provide it. Remember that the most expensive lessons are often the ones we need to learn the most. Jake paid $40,000 for his education, but he came out the other side wiser, more self-aware, more honest about his own needs and vulnerabilities. That's worth something, even if it cost more than any university degree. Thanks for watching, Bargirl Baddies. Take care of yourselves out there. Jake stands at Perth Airport sometimes, even now, watching the international arrivals board, watching couples reunite with tears and flowers and all the hope he used to feel. But this time he understands what he couldn't see before. Some flowers bloom only in specific climates, and trying to force them to grow in foreign soil, no matter how much you water them or how carefully you tend them, will only kill them in the end.